Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's about 8:30 in the morning here on the 12th of May, 2023. Mother's Day is this weekend, and 2 days on Sunday. And we've got the end of the week today, and of course we have OPEX next week. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look at the market, kind of get a feeler for where things are at. But before I get into all of this, as you all know, this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. You're responsible for your own trades, managing your own risk, doing your own research, and this is always just my opinion on the market. So let's go ahead and move on into the chart and take a look at things. I'm going to be taking a look at SPY here. You can correlate this to SPX. You can correlate this to the ES futures, whatever you'd like. But, taking a look at the market, what it looks like we are currently doing, it looks like we're in a little bit of a channel, right? We've got some dominant pivots here, as we can see. And, kind of zooming in a little bit, let's go to a 1 hour time frame and just kind of take a real quick peek at where things are at. So on a 1 hour time frame, we've got some decent price action intraday. But really, when it comes to like a long-term perspective, when we're taking a look at SPY, we've really kind of been in this range. Let me just go ahead and outline this. We've been in this kind of range for quite some time. So if I take this high here and this low here, and I just drag this over to the left, we can see that we've had significant areas of support and resistance in this particular area going back all the way back here to, roughly February of 2022. We found some support here. We had some consolidation inside of the zone, pretty strong rejection here. We had a strong rejection here as well after consolidating right here. We had a kind of a breakout failure. We came back down. We did a little bit of a retest in the zone and we failed. Then we had some resistance here, some good failures, including this, this major failure right here, which, caused about an 8.6% drop. Another failure right here, which caused another about 8.9% drop. And we're kind of trying to test this right here. What I believe is about ready to happen, just based on the price action, what you're starting to see is a lot of people talking about like a diamond formation. And I'm not going to discount the fact that, there is some, there is some validity to this, right? So we obviously have a little bit of an expansion here, and then we really don't have proof 100% that we've got contraction occurring just quite yet. We don't have that proof just quite yet. But really, this is what everybody's looking at. In my opinion, it's a little too early to state that, but going up here, down here, do a little bit of a push up to about right there before we break down, that would make a whole lot of sense. But that would go all the way into like the beginning of June, right? We're still talking almost a month before something like this can resolve. I know a lot of people are really expecting this to resolve like today. Some people are expecting it to resolve like Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, I think we're probably going to get a little bit of a pullback today, but I'm not really expecting it to be anything super significant. What I am more interested in paying attention to is the fact that we've got, let me just zoom in just a little bit more so we can just kind of focus on this price action that we've got. So very clear, we've got like a double bottom right here, right? We've got a double bottom right there. If we can go ahead and extend this out left and right, it's really going to be at the bottom of this range that I've already defined, right? So at the bottom of this red box. Now, if we've got that clearly defined as support, we really shouldn't go back down here and test that, because if we do, chances are pretty good we're going to fail. All right. So we've got three pivots that I think are important to pay attention to. And one is going to be this pivot right here. One is going to be this pivot right here. And one is going to be this pivot right here, which is still in the making, right? Obviously, this could go out a little ways. We could have this actually come out to about right there, which would mean, of course, that we would see, another spike up potentially today before we see a rejection to come back down here. Again, going into, at a minimum, we're talking like May 22nd, and then going all the way out here. Again, this would go out to the end of May or if it takes longer, to the very beginning of June. It really depends on how long it's going to take for something like this to potentially resolve. And I always use the term potentially because there's nothing guaranteed in trading. But all we can really do is take a look at old fractals and patterns and try and come up with a hypothesis where the market could be heading in the future. Do I expect the market's going to drop below 380 and just continue dropping? No, I don't think we're probably going to see price action below 380 anytime in the near future. Now, going forward, like a couple of years, yes, I do believe that we're probably going to see a pretty significant drop in the market. But at least for the short term, I'm not super bearish. I'm bearish, at least up here in this range, mostly because, we've had significant rise, and I'm going to go up to higher time frames again. We're going to take a real quick look at that. But when you're looking at the pattern, it does look like, especially if we go back down here to these lows right here at about 408, 409, if we get back down here, chances are pretty good we're going to see a continuation back down here to about 403, 404. Now, if and when that happens, I do expect we're probably going to see a break of that structure. So for the next, couple days, probably going to see another move up. Again, it could move up as high as about 415, 416. I'd really like to see it not violate above 415. Stopping right here at about 414 would make a whole lot of sense before we see this move down. Now, if we see this move down here, chances are pretty good we're probably going to see a bounce before we see a failure. It's probably going to look a little bit like this, and then we're probably going to see another retest before we see that continuation to the downside. Probably we'll find some support here, and then we'll see a big move up here. And then what I'm focusing on is the first bounce right here in this area, and then a rebound to this area, which you can see right here, and also going back over here, and all the way back here. These were all areas of support. So I would expect there to be a little bit of resistance here. Then we see that move down. This goes all the way into basically mid-June. So now we're talking about going into OPEX for June, or nearing that, right? So that would be a good raid of these lows, right? Because the market likes to do that. We create a low here, we get a little bit of a rebound, then we see another drop. Again, that usually occurs before we see a move back to the upside. Now, what I would say is probably we're going to create a little bit of a low sometime in June or July, and then I think we're going to see a move up into September. Very similar to what we saw last year, right? Very similar to what we saw last year. Let me go up to a 4-hour time frame, and let's just talk about this here for a moment. So going back here, something like this likely is going to happen, and maybe not as steep as this, right? This was a cliff dive. I'm not expecting that to happen. But when I say we got this low, a bounce, and then a push lower before we move up, I think it's going to be very similar to what happened, excuse me, what happened right here. We saw the push low, we had the rebound, we had a push lower before we had a significant move to the upside. And I think this is probably what's going to happen. And again, how long is it going to take? That really is anybody's guess. Nobody knows. Nobody can predict the future. Nobody can say with 100% certainty that anything is going to happen. But based on the structure that we have here, I do expect we're probably going to see a move down here, at least to this channel low, which is, again, created based off of these lows here, this low here, this low here. So if we come back down here, I expect it to be a significant amount of support. Now, what we haven't seen another test of this upper, right? So I've got a test up here. I thought, maybe I could pull this down lower, but I just don't like that it violated that. So that's why I've got it up here at this pivot. Makes a lot of sense to me. Now, if and when this happens, again, what we're probably going to see is we're going to see this move up here, find some resistance here at the median. Now, again, we're talking about trying to predict time, which nobody can really do very well. But seeing a move down here and then getting a move up here, we're talking about a move up into roughly September. So we would be looking for something like this to occur. This would go into September, right? So just look at that. That's September 11th. And I'm looking for a window sometime in September for another significant top to occur. Now, this would take us up to SPY being at 437, anywhere between 430 and 437, which means SPX more than likely is going to get somewhere near that 4,300 mark, maybe even 4,400. Probably not, right? Somewhere between 4,300, 4,350 sometime in September before we see another drop. And that's when I think we're going to see a drop back down to potentially new lows. And I think after we hit this high up here in September, I think it's very likely that we're probably going to see a multiple months of downside. And I think it's probably going to last all the way into April. So we're talking about, again, a measured move going down into April. So again, I'm really trying to, put some waves here in the shorter time frames, but the longer term going into April of next year. So we're really talking like almost a year from now that I'm expecting the market to create really a significant bottom. And when I say a significant bottom, I'm talking about a move below 3,500. And the reason why I believe that is likely to happen is because chances are pretty good we're going to see, again, it's probably going to look something more like this, move down here to this 339 area, which is, again, a significant support zone based off of this high right here before the COVID drop. I would expect that if we get down to that area, we're going to find an extreme amount of support. And this is what's going to cause a rally, excuse me, a rally to go back up to new highs. I think only after this happens, we get a move up to new highs. So again, from a wave structure, you can count this a number of different ways. There's a number of different ways to count this, but from up here, we can see we've got a little bit of a diagonal here going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then from here, we've got 5 waves down, and then we're going to be looking at, again up here, an A, a B, A, B, C, right here. We've got an ABC wave, right? So we've got, pretty solid evidence that this is what's currently in the making. Nothing guaranteed. It's just evidence. We're just collecting evidence based on the structure that we've got, right? So we've got 5 waves down, potentially 3 waves up. And then right now I've got this as 3 waves down, but I expect this is going to be more like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's probably going to look from up here. It's probably going to look like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we've got a capitulation move down here. Again, looking like into April. So that's going to be the completion of a large correction. So this is, again, going to look like an A, a B, and then a C. And that's more than likely going to be what the completion of this part of the correction is likely going to look like. After we get that move down there, again, I think this is a great place to be buying, a great place to be buying stock, great place to be buying equity in general. And, we'll have to wait and see what happens with crypto. We're going to have to wait to see what happens with gold and silver and oil and all of these different factors, including interest rates, right? So if the Fed starts to cut interest rates, that could cause some instability in the market. If we see that pause, right, and I expect that once we get here, that's probably when we're going to get that indication that we're going to see a pause in rates, and that's probably going to fuel this rally that I'm expecting into September. Now, when we get into September, we don't know. This is a very news-driven market, so I'm trying not to have too much of a bias on what the news might be, or at least trying to predict what the news might be, but something likely is going to happen. We don't know what it is. And then on this drop, this is when we're going to start seeing, more than likely, cutting rates, very similar to what the, basically very similar to what happened at the bottom of the COVID crash, right? So we saw a cutting of rates, and that, again, is what caused the market to finally rebound. When the Fed starts to panic, that's when things are more than likely going to see a pretty significant pivot. So again, when we get down here, and again, could this go lower? Sure. I'm not expecting it to go super low. Right now, we've got a lot of bears in the market, which is also one of the reasons why I'm not expecting a huge drop, either before or after OPEX. If we get a significant drop, more than likely it's going to be Wednesday or Thursday next week after VIX expires, right? So the volatility index has an extreme amount of calls that are that are in the books right now. Open interest and calls is very, very high for next week's expiration. And so I would expect that a significant drop is probably not going to happen until later in the week. Sure, we're probably going to get a little bit of a pullback here and there. But again, we're still in this zone, this chop zone. So as long as we're in here, I would be very careful. And if you're going to be playing calls or puts, it's better to be playing in equity or in stock versus playing in, say, for instance, SPY or SPX. And if you do, it's best to be played with short term, like day trades, because the market has been very choppy. The market has not been very it hasn't been very forgiving. And again, being inside of this zone, certainly it does look like we have a miniature head and shoulders short term. So for, again, going into early next week, it does look like we've got a head and shoulders, again, looking like this. If we see this move down here, chances are good we're going to fall. Now, let's also take a look at this. One more thing I want to take a look at before I end the video today. What would be our target if this is a head and shoulders, right? And I say if because there's no confirmation that that's what's going on here. So we're going to take the dominant pivot high, which is right there at 417.61. We're going to take our neckline, which is going to be right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my template that I've got for my range expansion. So 389, we'll call it 390. That's going to be where the head and shoulders target would be. And that just happens to be, just in case you haven't noticed, that happens to be right where we've got a significant bottom right here. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to use my fib and I'm going to go ahead and put, actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to use the fib channel because I think that's going to create what I'm looking for here. So let's go ahead and put this same area and let's expand this down here. So I'm going to expand this down here and I'm going to get rid of my range expansion. So again, looking at this, this is basically our range expansion right down here, this red line. And that again is very close to where I was already looking for there to be a significant bounce before one more move lower to the trend line before we see a move higher. Now again, that's a range expansion to the downside. What does a range expansion to the upside look like? Well, let's just take a look at this. All right, so range expansion, we've got a level right here at about 425. We've got a level here at 432. So if this happens faster than I'm expecting, this happens going into August, right? So we can see that, we're going to be getting to an area where we're either going to retest this upper, or we could hit that scenario where the upper of this actually needs to be down here, which means we're probably going to see this start lower versus higher. And this would be a range expansion to the upside after a range expansion to the downside. So keeping an eye on this as time goes by, we'll continue to watch it. We'll continue to see what the market looks like and where we think it's going to go. Last thing. I think I've already said that once, but I'm just going to do one last thing here. So a wave analysis. We've got the red wave, the white wave, the yellow wave, all up here in overbought. And historically speaking, when all three of these have gotten up here into overbought, now I'm not going to ignore the green wave, right? I'm still going to pay attention to it. But when all three of these waves have gotten up here into overbought at the same time, the last time that happened, just for the record, was right here. Right, so we had all of these waves that were up here in overbought all at the same time. And so that started roughly right there. Right, so you can see if we take this straight up, it happened right before that cliff dive. Right, I'm not saying we're going to get a cliff dive. I'm not saying that. So don't make no mistake. I'm not saying that we're going to have a cliff dive. Now, would I enjoy that? Sure, that'd be really interesting. But this happened the last time, and we had a significant drop. Right, and again, I'm expecting there to be a drop. I'm not really expecting it to be a cliff dive. I'm not expecting us to go back down to the lows. I'm not really expecting anything like that. I'm looking for a good dip buying opportunity to buy some equity, to buy some stocks before we see this move up here. I want to take advantage of this. We took advantage of this last year. I'm expecting to take advantage of it again this year. And this would be a move from June all the way through September, right? So we're talking about all of July and all of August and a good portion of the end of the end of June and the beginning of September. I want to take advantage of that. So once we get a good significant pullback, and again, it might not come back down here, but if we get a good pullback, I'm going to start layering into some equities and catch this move up here, and then move back to cash, right? Move back to cash, move into some modest short positions. Again, I enjoy playing SQQQ, SPXS, things like that. That's what I enjoy playing because it's leveraged, but it's not leveraged to a point where you're going to risk, all of your position, right? Not like an option trade where you could actually see the decay and it just goes down to zero. These leveraged ETFs do have some decay factor in them, but it's not anywhere near what you would have if you're playing options. And again, most people play options too close to expiration or too far away from the money, so they're going to see their positions decay anyway. And I think that's also what we're seeing right now. Again, we keep talking about this range. We're chopping in this range. Most people probably have calls above 417. Most people have puts below 404. So those positions are all going to be decaying, and you can see all of that in the books. But anyway, this is what I think the market is more than likely going to do. And this, again, is just my opinion. And of course, if you'd like to chat about this, you know where to find me. You can find me on Discord. If you need access to our Discord, you can find all of that information on BitDoctor.org. If you need access to our trading room, if you need access to our indicators, if you need access to any of the educational content that we have in our Discord, you can find all of that information on how to access on BitDoctor.org. And last but not least, wherever you're on the world, I hope you're having a good day, a good night, and a great evening. Take care, everybody.